Yep. So this has been pretty amazing in terms of prefiguring. Part of organizing is imagining something that hasn't happened and imagining that it can happen. Imagine the bus riders union before it happened. Imagine the community rights campaign before it happened. And imagine this event before it happened, because when Fred and I and Diane and Robin were on some emails together, what I envisioned was, first of all, a multiracial room in South Central Los Angeles with bus riders, working class people, LGBTQ students, kids fighting the truancy tickets, people who are planting their own gardens, people who are fighting cancer, people who are fighting cancer. As one person came up to me and said, I have to come because my father was a jazz musician who died of colon cancer, who was a communist, so I have to come. And I was like, all the interactions of why a person would want to come, and our reconstruction of community around a coherent, again, I'll argue, anti-racist, anti-imperialist frame. Because if you look at, so the first thing I want to say is about, I don't think you can envision and prefigure without organization. I think organization is the key to any hope. What Fred and I think all of us are saying is, but what kind of organization? What's the culture of organization? What's the constant evolution of our thinking about organization? But let's be clear that the only organization we know has never worked is the thing called the individual. And that's what capitalism wants you to think about. I don't need to be in an organization. Well, no, then you're in theirs. So you're fine. You joined theirs. Just understand you've joined an organization. It's just not your own. So I think organization is everything. And it's the organization of this room. It's the conversation that, when Diane and I were on the radio talking about Fred, I said to Diane, honestly, well, because I always worry about how many people are going to show up. And organizers, everybody have different insecurities. Mine is I have to have a full room, otherwise I don't feel good. But then I said, well, Diane, if it's just Fred, you, me, and Robin, that'll be a pretty amazing evening. Just the four of us talking will be a conversation that I can't really imagine any place else happening. So, and it's proven to be the very conversation I had really hoped. I didn't know what a 15th was, but now I know that it's really important. And one of the things I think is great is going into a conversation where you know just a little, but just enough to know that you're sort of getting it, but of course you don't get it, but you get it at enough levels that you want to know more. And another thing about the Strategy Center is our respect for the intellect of the working class. Because when I was at Cornell and I walked in as a freshman from public school, the first thing I realized is I might flunk out. That my effort to figure stuff out was a survival, because I could not get the level of this conversation. This was not what I had been exposed to. And all these other people were talking about choate and extra. I didn't know, I thought those were diseases. I didn't know what they were. It turns out they were prep schools. But anyway, the point is that at the highest level of conversation that I know happening in the city is at the Bus Riders Union General Membership that happens in Korean, Spanish, and English just yesterday, which was pretty amazing. So it is important for you to understand this is a Strategy Center organized event, and that we're all part of the Strategy Center, and we're all part of many other forums. It's not just the Strategy Center, but we relate to a lot of different forms. Second thing that's very important that want your response to, Fred, is the dialectic between continuity and change, and I would say the danger, though, of remorse and disassociation. Because I've had that tendency to sort of, now I'm in a really good place, as opposed to yesterday when I wasn't in a good place. But wait, today is, what am I going to think tomorrow? If that's the model, it's a pretty scary model, because I look back at a lot of places I wish I wasn't. And I have to realize, yeah, but you were there. So what are you going to do about it? That is your past. And the reason I think this is important is because I feel a tremendous continuity between between Marcus Garvey and the Communist Party and Of course, Rosa Parks, the Highlander School, Du Bois, SDS, SNCC, CORE, left wing of NAACP, National Liberation Front, Weatherman, Black Panther Party, Young Lords, Brown Berets, Red Garde, so that Red Stockings. I mean, if we go through all these different forms, I think it's really important to feel the continuities, because there's a tremendous effort to undo the tremendous achievement of any organization. Because every organization can be critiqued in retrospect, even by its own members, who do these horrible, what are they called, recantations, which the system, what does the system want when you come in front of the McCarthy period? Are you now, or have you ever been, a member of an organization, in this case the Communist Party? And what they want people to say is, I was never in the organization, or I was fooled, I was tricked, I was used. So it wasn't me, I didn't do it. Somebody else did it to me, and therefore I can undo my own history. And I think it's really important to have the continuity and the revolutionary breaks, both, in our history, and that's something that I'm just trying to grapple with. So two other things, then back to Fred. I think it's very important that mental health and psychology be understood primarily in a collective context. That is to say, I'll give you two examples. The Bus Riders Union has achieved a lot of things. And I know you hear us about 50-cent fare and $20 passes, but at the core of it is the humiliation of oppressed nationality, working class people and women on the buses of Los Angeles, and what that experience is like, being groped, being late to work, being in control of your own destiny, waking up in the morning having to take a bus an hour earlier because you're on a job that has a time clock. And if you're 1 minute late, you can get fired. So in order to be not 1 minute late because the MTA is not reliable, you get up an hour earlier to get on a bus that might get you there a minute early or an hour early. But the key is the boss will not let you be late. So Norma Henry, who's here, and in my book on agitation, at one moment she got furious, Norma being one of the leaders of the Bus Riders Union, and she said, if this bus system had 500,000 white men, you would never tolerate this. And for that split second, I envisioned a bus system with 500,000 white men in it, which of course is incomprehensible, but it's right. They could be the poorest white people in the world, and they would not be treated the way bus riders are treated today. And secondly, when we did the thing about the traffic tickets, what the kids were saying is, I was 1 minute late for school, and I was arrested by a cop. 1 minute late for school, and I was arrested by a cop on truancy. And I felt that I was humiliating my mother, because I had to go home back and tell her I had a $250 ticket, that she's making $6 an hour, divide 6 into 250, and figure out what the cost was to her family. The point is, it's the mass humiliation, the mass national oppression, that the psychology of the oppressed in a collective context is what gives us the chance for collective organizing. And finally, I want to talk about the role of jazz. This is sort of very personal and dangerous to say, but I envision the Strategy Center sometimes as a Duke Ellington big band. Because I don't know jazz like you all, but I do. There's a section in my book about sings with the choir but finds her own voice, and I use Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers as my example. And the thing I remembered about when I heard, the thing that made me understand about Duke Ellington is when some guy said, I would rather be the second clarinetist in the Duke Ellington band than form my own. Because that's where greatness was, is the collectivity and the kind of Seven Samurai and grabbing the absolute best group of people who wanted to play together is something, Fred, that is maybe the most amazing thing I heard. You know, every day you heard something new from Fred. But I think the big band theory, thank you, Robin, is another amazing aspect of getting to know Fred Ho.
I echo your views, Eric, because collective is essential for transcendence. If collective means uniformity or mediocrity, I don't want to be part of it. But if collective is the catalyst for transcendence, for creativity, which most of the times, if it's done right, because it can be done wrong, if it's done right, then it's magical. Here are the criteria for transcendence that I have. 1, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. 2, you will come up with surprises you never planned for that will be better than what you planned for. 3, the vanguard will become both obsolete and the embryo of a new vanguard. In other words, it needs, it's like my philosophy about teaching. I'm impossible to be hired by any university, even though my stack of credentials matches or exceeds most of them. Someone just told me recently I've been nominated for the MacArthur Genius Award 20 times, and I hold the record for someone who's been nominated that high and never gotten it. So there's a reason for that. You know. So here's my philosophy of teaching, which no university will accept. I tell my private students who come to me, you've entered a boot camp. My job is to kick your ass so you learn how to kick mine, make me obsolete, and I can retire. And I want to retire soon. So, in that sense, I have a view of the collective that is selective. In terms of disassociation, recantation, continuity change, something Mo Nishida, longtime veteran revolutionary who's here today, he always teaches me a lot of things, and one of the things that we were talking about was, in the past we had such hardcore, rough struggle, that a lot of people burned out or they dropped out, and they're not contributing anything today. Even though, there was a lot of folks. I mean, my legacy of liberation, one of the things I assert in my introduction is that during the late 60s, 70s, the brightest and the best Asian Pacific Americans did not want to join the system. They wanted to become revolutionaries. The brightest and the best. They didn't, they some of them went to the best schools, Stanford, the Ivy Leagues and so forth. But, they were committed to something because they saw that the system was actually mediocre, because the system was boring. The system was incapable of matching the zeal, the energy, the thinking that they had, because they were thinking about, how to change the world. And we lost a lot of them. And I confess myself, I was a hard ass in these sessions too. And they burned out or dropped out, and Mo said to me, yeah, that was a big waste. It was a waste. We wasted a lot of time and energy in the sense that people, when you struggle with them, need to reach a higher capacity of commitment, creativity, and clarity, not give up. And they give up is because you basically stomp them so hard, without a spirit of generosity or compassion, and they say, fuck it. I didn't sign up for this, And that's when democratic centralism, and I have, a complex view on it. I haven't rejected it. I don't totally accept how we did. I think most of the way we implemented it was wrong, but I haven't completely rejected it. Basically, it adopted the same ethos as the military were fighting. Commandism, leadership that's unquestioned. It's unquestioned because, unlike even the mainstream military, you didn't earn your rank, you were anointed it in a lot of ways. How could Jerry Tung, for instance, be the clearest? What God gave him that? but that's what you had, you know? So, I think at some point I described it, and it's a correct criticism, of cult of personality, but it goes even deeper than that. Why did we allow it? Why did we accept it? Why did we believe in it? Why do we participate in it? All these kinds of things. So it comes to the mental health of ourselves and the psychology of ourselves, that we still believe in this idea of the individual genius, the individual greatness, and all that kind of stuff. And we don't question that, because what I've learned is that the boot camp of my struggles in my life and the people who put those boot camps on me made me stronger, made me better. But I went through a boot camp, and we all have to go through those, if we're going to really make the kind of growth for not only a lifetime, but even beyond our lifetime, so that people say, wow, he's finally gone, thank God, But we'll say, wow, remember when he said this, or remember when this was done. It stays as a legacy that continues to stay dynamic. If you listen to any of the great artists, no matter how old or when the record was done, or even how smashed they were, the greatness there, you always hear something new and fresh. The Monk biography that Robin did, is like Monk's music. You can keep going back to it and learn so much from it. Even the small little things, like, I was telling Robin, one of the things that will always stick to me is the account that he says when Monk's agent, Harry Columbia, called Max Roach for some advice about how to get bookings and stuff, and Max said, look up Downbeat Magazine, click. And I said, okay, we've all faced that when you go to someone who you think is going to be an elder or someone of support and get rejected and turned off, and the door slammed in your face. Okay, I'm not putting down Max because I love Max, but you face these things, and those stories illuminate you about our humanity, particularly our faults and our weaknesses, and how much more we can do to work on it. And I think that we're always constantly a work in progress. That's why improvisation is always, to me, the most dynamic art form. Because it is collective, it is interactive, and it's transcendent. If you keep doing the same lines that you practiced, your patterns or whatever, you're gone. And it'll be somebody on the bandstand who'll say, ho, get off that bandstand. Okay, you swallow crow, and you come back more prepared.
Yeah.